Have you ever asked yourself why so many people work tirelessly, sacrifice endlessly, and yet watch as wealth slips through their fingers, while a rare few seem to accumulate it with uncanny consistency, almost as if they understand a law the rest of the world has forgotten? The answer is not in luck, inheritance, or intelligence alone. It lies in the invisible architecture of the mind, the unseen patterns of thought, belief, and emotion that shape every action and, ultimately, every outcome. Napoleon Hill devoted his life to uncovering these patterns, showing that wealth begins in the subconscious, molded by desire, faith, and repeated thought. The Stoics, centuries before him, understood that the untrained mind is a slave to external events and fleeting impulses. The fusion of these two insights reveals why the majority fail and why the disciplined few succeed. Most people fail at wealth because they hand over control of their inner world to circumstances. A job loss, a market dip, a sudden expense, a harsh comment, any one of these is enough to trigger panic, doubt, and despair. They react emotionally, making hasty decisions that compromise their long-term growth. Hill warned that fear and indecision are the enemies of success, while the Stoics taught that the mind should remain sovereign, observing events without surrendering to them. Wealth is not a reward for those who react. It is the natural outcome for those who respond with clarity, discipline, and strategic patience. Desire alone is not enough. Motivation alone is not enough. Most people have moments of inspiration but lack the structure to carry it forward. Hill identified definiteness of purpose, persistence, and the repeated impressing of one's goals upon the subconscious as the essential steps to success. The Stoics, meanwhile, focused on mastery over impressions, training themselves to remain calm, rational, and resilient no matter the turmoil around them. When these principles converge, they produce a mind that does not merely wish for wealth, but becomes capable of attracting, creating, and sustaining it through deliberate, consistent action. The failure of the many is rooted in inconsistency and emotional surrender. They allow temporary setbacks to define identity. They let fear dictate choices. They seek quick gratification and avoid disciplined planning. Hill explained that every thought impresses the subconscious. If the thoughts are chaotic, fearful, or doubtful, the life that unfolds will mirror them. The Stoics would say that giving your mind to external chaos is the fastest path to inner and outer failure. The few who succeed are those who internalize these lessons. They cultivate desire with reason, they pair ambition with patience, and they shape their inner world so that external events can no longer derail them. Notice how this explains patterns across history. Wealthy individuals who sustain their success do not simply stumble into it. They develop a mental framework that absorbs shocks, interprets adversity as information, and converts vision into action. They understand that fortune favors the prepared mind, and preparation begins internally. The Stoic remains composed when the market fluctuates, when allies betray, when crises arise, because emotional stability preserves the ability to act. Hill's disciple visualizes the goal, feeds it into the subconscious, and allows it to guide decisions automatically. Together, these strategies create a powerful gravitational force that pulls opportunities, resources, and results toward the individual. Failure, then, is predictable. It is the outcome of surrendering to impulses, neglecting the subconscious, ignoring the power of repeated thought, and allowing emotional turbulence to dictate action. Success, equally, is predictable for those who understand these laws. The Stoics avoided chaos by mastering perception. Hill's students avoided limitation by mastering imagination and belief. Both teach that wealth is a reflection, not of circumstance, but of the mind. If you wish to understand why most people fail and how you can ensure you do not, you must first understand that everything begins internally, in the unseen, in the patterns of thought and emotional discipline that govern every action before it is even taken. And so, the first step toward avoiding failure is awareness. Awareness that the mind is the battlefield, that external events are neutral, and that your internal responses will either create or destroy your future. The second step is daily practice, rehearsing the vision, cultivating composure, reinforcing purpose, and training the subconscious to serve your highest goals. The third step is persistence, continuing the ritual, even when the world seems indifferent, even when progress is invisible, because the mind, once aligned, quietly commands reality in ways that eventually cannot be ignored. This is the secret that most never grasp. Wealth is not a reward for toil alone, nor is it a prize of luck. It is the inevitable consequence of a disciplined mind that blends desire with reason, faith with calm, vision with action. Those who fail are not unlucky, they are undisciplined. Those who succeed are not fortunate, they are sovereign. And as you listen now, you have a choice to follow the path of reaction, chaos, and surrender, or to walk the path of conscious mastery, where every thought, every emotion, and every daily action is a deliberate step toward unstoppable success. The question is simple, but the answer demands courage. Will you allow your mind to be dictated by circumstance, or will you take control, as the Stoics did, as Napoleon Hill taught, and align yourself with the invisible laws that govern wealth itself? Most people fail at wealth, not because they lack talent, intelligence, or ambition, but because they misunderstand the very nature of money and the mind that attracts it. They think wealth is external, something to be earned, seized, or discovered. They chase opportunities haphazardly, react to crises with panic, and surrender their decisions to the noise of the world. The Stoics would call this a mind enslaved by impressions, a mind that confuses events with meaning. Napoleon Hill would call it a mind that feeds the subconscious with fear and doubt, rather than purpose and belief. Both perspectives reveal the same truth. Unless the mind is disciplined, wealth cannot take root. Consider how easily most people are hijacked by emotion. A market dip becomes panic. A harsh comment becomes self-doubt. A delay becomes despair. The untrained mind interprets these events as verdicts on worth, ability, and future prospects. Hill warned that the subconscious cannot distinguish between truth and imagined fear. It acts on whatever impressions dominate it. The Stoics warned that surrendering to emotional turbulence undermines reason and power. Together, they reveal that the reason most fail at wealth is psychological. The external world only magnifies what is already inside. If your mind is chaotic, your finances, career, and opportunities will mirror that chaos. The wealthy, by contrast, operate with internal sovereignty. They understand that events are neutral and that only their perception gives them weight. When a setback occurs, the Stoics remain calm, observing the event without surrendering to panic or despair. Hill's students, trained in the principles of autosuggestion, return to their vision with faith and persistence, knowing that temporary obstacles are simply information, not judgment. This internal discipline allows them to act decisively, see opportunities others miss, and avoid the mistakes that come from emotional reactivity. Wealth is the shadow of this internal mastery. Another reason people fail is impatience. Most desire results instantly. They confuse motion with progress, activity with momentum. Hill emphasized the importance of persistence and repeated, emotionally charged visualization. The Stoics emphasized endurance and rational action in the face of delays. Both teach that wealth is a process, not a moment. Without patience, most abandon their vision. The moment results are slow, feedback is uncomfortable, or progress is invisible. In doing so, they forfeit the compounding effect of disciplined action that ultimately produces massive advantage. A third reason is lack of clarity. People fail because they do not define what they want, or confuse desire with vague hope. Hill called this the definite major purpose, the singular goal that organizes thought, emotion, and action. The Stoics called it living according to reason, aligning your actions with virtue and purpose rather than being led by impulse. Without clarity, the mind drifts, the subconscious is fed conflicting messages, and behavior becomes inconsistent. Opportunity cannot be leveraged by someone whose vision is scattered. Fortune avoids ambiguity and gravitates toward focus. The daily habits of thought, reflection, and visualization separate the wealthy from the rest. Hill prescribed repeated affirmation and vivid mental imagery to impress the subconscious with certainty. The Stoics practiced journaling, reflection, and mental rehearsal to maintain reason over impulse. Both systems emphasize repetition, consistency, and the cultivation of a mind that is disciplined above circumstance. The difference between failure and success is often invisible, occurring long before results manifest externally. It happens in the hours spent cultivating mental clarity, emotional control, and aligned purpose. Finally, consider how fear of failure and attachment to immediate comfort derail most people. They avoid risks, cling to the familiar, and let external pressures dictate choices. Hill taught that desire backed by faith overcomes fear. The subconscious obeys the dominant thought. Stoics taught that attachment to externals produces anxiety, while detachment cultivates freedom and resilience. When these principles are combined, they reveal a path through which setbacks become training, doubt becomes fuel, and persistence becomes effortless. Failure is no longer an accident. It is a choice made by those who surrender their inner ought. Hority. The stark reality is this: wealth is a reflection of the mind, not just effort. Those who fail have minds that are reactive, scattered, and fear-driven. Those who succeed have minds that are disciplined, focused, and resilient. By observing the failures of the many and adopting the mental strategies of the Stoics and Hill, you can avoid the traps that consume the untrained mind. This is not theory, it is law. The question is whether you will begin to act on it today, or continue allowing chaos, fear, and indecision to dictate the outcome of your life. When you begin to study the minds of those who consistently build wealth, a pattern emerges that is both subtle and profound. It is not that they are luckier, smarter, or more talented than the rest of the world. It is that they operate according to invisible laws that govern thought, emotion, and action, the same laws Napoleon Hill and the Stoics described centuries apart. Hill observed that the subconscious mind cannot distinguish between what is vividly imagined and what is real. It acts on repeated, emotionally charged thoughts. The Stoics observed that a mind ruled by reason rather than impulse remains unshakable in the face of circumstance. Together, these insights reveal a critical truth. Wealth is not built in the external world. It is built first in the mind. Most people fail because they ignore this principle. They chase external results, believing money will bring security, status, or peace, only to discover that their inner turbulence sabotages everything. A sudden loss sends them into panic. A harsh critique becomes unbearable. Delays feel like doom. Hill would say their subconscious is saturated with fear and limitation. The Stoics would say they are enslaved to impressions rather than ruled by reason. The consequences are the same: reactive decisions, inconsistent action, and the gradual erosion of opportunity. Wealth cannot flourish in a mind dominated by chaos. Contrast this with those who have learned the art of mental sovereignty. They begin each day with purpose, visualizing their goals and reinforcing their vision with emotional intensity. They anticipate setbacks and rehearse responses. They condition their subconscious to act automatically in alignment with long-term objectives. This is the fusion of Hill's principle of autosuggestion and the Stoic practice of premeditatio malorum, foreseeing challenges to remain composed. The result is a mind that does not merely dream, it directs, executes, and endures, creating a gravitational pull towards success. Another reason people fail is impatience. They confuse busyness with progress and motion with momentum. Hill emphasized that persistence, when combined with a clear vision and faith, is what transforms desire into reality. The Stoics emphasized enduring difficulty without complaint, understanding that virtue and rational action must be maintained even in adversity. The fusion of these disciplines creates a person who acts with relentless consistency, unaffected by temporary setbacks, whose progress compounds invisibly until it manifests externally in unmistakable ways. Fear is perhaps the most common and most destructive force in the lives of those who fail. Fear of loss, fear of criticism, fear of uncertainty, they dominate decision-making, cloud judgment, and paralyze action. Hill taught that desire backed by faith neutralizes fear, converting it into fuel for action. The Stoics taught that attachment to externals is the root of distress, and that freedom arises when the mind rules itself rather than circumstances. By combining these principles, the wealthy mind transforms fear from a barrier into a signal, a guide, and a motivator rather than a cage. Finally, clarity of purpose is the hallmark of those who succeed. Hill called it definiteness of purpose, the singular goal that organizes thought, emotion, and behavior. The Stoics called it living in accordance with reason, aligning actions with virtue and long-term objectives rather than reacting to transient impulses. Without clarity, energy dissipates, attention wanders, and the mind becomes vulnerable to distraction, doubt, and despair. Those who succeed are not necessarily more talented, they are deliberate, focused, and disciplined in their mental habits. They have cultivated a mind that resists the chaos that traps most people. Every morning you spend feeding your mind with fear, indecision, or distraction is another day that compounds failure. Every morning you practice emotional sovereignty, visualize your goals, and rehearse your purpose is another day that compounds wealth. The difference between failure and success is invisible at first. It is internal, subtle, and psychological, but over time the results become undeniable, manifesting as opportunities seized, obstacles navigated, and compounding advantage realized. To avoid the common traps that consume the majority, you must first master what Hill and the Stoics both identified. The mind is the ultimate foundation of wealth, and it will either build or destroy a life, depending on how you govern it. The deeper you examine why most people fail at wealth, the clearer it becomes that external circumstances matter far less than internal mastery. Consider this: two people may face the same market crash, the same economic downturn, the same personal setback. One is devastated, paralyzed by fear, abandoning their plans, surrendering to circumstance. The other remains composed, analyzes the situation rationally, identifies the opportunities hidden within the challenge, and continues acting toward their long-term vision. The difference is not luck. It is not connections. It is not intelligence. It is control of thought, emotion, and focus. This is the very principle the Stoics lived by, and the very law Hill discovered in those who accumulated extraordinary success. Most people fail because they are internally fragmented. Their attention is scattered, their emotions dictate action, their beliefs are inconsistent, and their desires are poorly aligned with reality. Hill warned that such inconsistency programs the subconscious with doubt, fear, and failure. The Stoics warned that a mind enslaved by impressions is incapable of true freedom or strategic action. Together, they reveal the invisible architecture that separates the majority from the minority, the internal order, discipline, and clarity that must be cultivated daily. Without it, even talent, hard work, or intelligence is wasted. The wealthy mind, however, is deliberate. It practices foresight. It anticipates obstacles and trains itself to respond with composure. Each decision is guided by purpose, not impulse. Hill emphasized impressing the subconscious with definite goals. The Stoics emphasized preparing for adversity and ruling impressions rather than being ruled by them. When fused, these principles create a person who does not panic when the unexpected occurs, who sees opportunity where others see chaos, and who acts decisively while most are paralyzed by uncertainty. Wealth becomes a byproduct of this disciplined approach. Another reason people fail is impatience with the invisible process. Most want results immediately. They mistake frantic activity for progress, busyness for effectiveness. Hill taught that repeated, emotionally charged visualization and persistent action gradually ingrain success into the subconscious, ultimately guiding behavior toward inevitable achievement. The Stoics taught that enduring hardship without complaint and aligning action with reason rather than emotion builds inviolable resilience. The fusion produces a mind capable of sustained, focused effort that compounds invisibly until outcomes manifest externally with unmistakable clarity. Fear of failure is another subtle but lethal force. People act from avoidance, not aspiration. They cling to comfort, retreat from calculated risk, and allow minor setbacks to derail them. Hill taught that faith-backed desire transforms fear into creative energy. Stoics taught that freedom arises from detachment, valuing the internal over the external. By applying these principles together, the wealthy mind converts obstacles into training, setbacks into signals, and fear into disciplined action rather than paralysis. This is the invisible distinction between those who fail and those who prosper. Finally, the lack of clarity dooms many. Without a definite purpose, without a vision that organizes thought, feeling, and action, the mind drifts. Hill called this the definite major purpose, a singular goal so vivid and compelling that it directs the subconscious like a magnet. Stoics called it living according to reason, aligning action with long-term principles rather than transient desires. Without clarity, energy dissipates, focus wanes, and the mind becomes prey to distraction and doubt. Those who succeed are not extraordinary in raw ability. They are disciplined, deliberate, and persistent. They have mastered their inner world, and in doing so, ensure that wealth is not a possibility, but an inevitable consequence. The invisible foundation of wealth is built long before money, influence, or opportunity manifests externally. It is built in thought, emotion, and discipline. Every day you allow fear, distraction, or indecision to dominate your mind, you are laying a foundation for failure. Every day you practice clarity, focus, visualization, and emotional sovereignty, you are constructing the architecture that allows wealth to flow naturally. To avoid the traps that consume the majority, you must commit to mastering the inner life. Without internal mastery, external success is always at risk. With it, even chaos becomes opportunity and failure becomes impossible. The path to wealth, when understood through the fusion of Napoleon Hill and Stoic principles, is not glamorous, sudden, or effortless. It is subtle, invisible, and cumulative. It begins in the mind, long before it manifests in bank accounts, titles, or properties. Hill insisted that wealth begins with desire, defined and magnified through faith and repeated mental imagery. Stoics insisted that the mind must remain sovereign, that emotions must be ruled rather than indulged, and that reason must guide action regardless of circumstance. Those who fail ignore one or both of these truths. They desire without discipline, or they react without direction. Most failures occur not because people lack ambition, but because their ambition is untamed. Desire without structure is chaotic, like an untethered flame flickering in the wind, visible but powerless. Hill taught that desire must be transformed into a definite purpose, fixed in the subconscious with emotional intensity. The Stoics taught that impulses must be observed, measured, and directed through reason. Together, these insights create a mind that is both passionate and disciplined, one that acts with relentless purpose yet does not collapse under temporary adversity. Those who master this tension find wealth arriving not by chance, but as a natural extension of internal order. The daily cultivation of mental discipline is what separates fleeting success from lasting achievement. Hill emphasized the repeated impressing of goals upon the subconscious. Affirmation, visualization, and emotion combined to program the mind for action. The Stoics emphasized reflection, rehearsal, and detachment, teaching that a mind anchored in reason is invulnerable to panic, distraction, or despair. When combined, these disciplines produce a psychological engine capable of sustaining momentum regardless of external turbulence. Success, then, is not dependent on opportunity alone. It is the inevitable consequence of internal alignment. Another reason people fail is inconsistency. The untrained mind acts in bursts of motivation followed by long periods of distraction or inactivity. Hill described this as the difference between temporary desire and burning desire. The latter fuels action until it becomes inevitable. The Stoics described it as the difference between fleeting impressions and reasoned judgment. The former enslaves, the latter liberates. Wealth cannot be built by impulse alone. It requires repeated, disciplined effort directed by a mind that is calm, clear, and purpose-driven. The majority falters because they never cultivate that daily consistency. Fear and emotional reactivity are equally destructive. People abandon goals at the first sign of difficulty, change direction with every disappointment, and allow anxiety to dictate choices. Hill warned that fear blocks the subconscious from directing action towards success. Stoics warned that attachment to externals produces suffering and paralysis. When these teachings are combined, the lesson is clear. A mind that rules itself, that faces adversity without panic, and that persists regardless of temporary outcomes, will inevitably convert desire into tangible results. Fear, when mastered, becomes fuel. Uncertainty, when observed without attachment, becomes opportunity. Finally, clarity and definiteness of purpose are paramount. Hill insisted that vague goals create vague results. The Stoics insisted that living without reason is chaos. Only when desire is focused, purpose is defined, and the mind is disciplined daily, can wealth take root and flourish. This clarity organizes action, filters distractions, and guides decisions toward consistent long-term growth. Those who fail lack this precision, wandering through life with an ambition unmoored, susceptible to distraction, fear, and impatience. Those who succeed have anchored themselves in inner order, transforming each day into a step toward inevitable wealth. The lesson is simple but profound. Wealth is the reflection of a disciplined, focused, and sovereign mind. Those who fail are not unlucky. They are undisciplined, reactive, and inconsistent. Those who succeed are not extraordinary. They are methodical, patient, and mentally sovereign. By studying the habits of the successful, by applying Hill's principles of desire and faith, and by practicing the Stoic mastery of perception and emotion, you can avoid the traps that destroy most. The question is whether you will take this knowledge seriously, internalize it daily, and act relentlessly to transform your inner world, because only from there does true, lasting wealth emerge. Now is the moment where all understanding, all insight, all preparation must converge into action. The Stoics taught that knowledge without application is like a seed buried in the dark, never allowed to grow. Napoleon Hill taught that thought without action is wasted energy. and that only by impressing purpose upon the subconscious through repetition and emotion does vision become reality. The difference between failure and success is no longer external. It is internal, psychological, and deliberate. You can know these truths and still fail if you do not move. You can feel inspired and still watch opportunities slip by if your mind and action are not aligned. The time to act is now, and the instrument of that action is your disciplined mind. Most people will never understand this. They will spend their lives reacting, drifting, and surrendering control. They will blame circumstances, luck, or timing. They will chase fleeting highs and abandon effort at the first sign of difficulty. The Stoics would call this a mind enslaved to impressions, a life lived without reason. Hill would call it a mind dominated by fear and doubt, incapable of directing the subconscious toward its own goals. And the result is predictable mediocrity, frustration, and lost potential. Yet you have the knowledge to break that cycle. You have the opportunity to command your mind, your emotions, and your actions in a way that the majority never will. The disciplined mind does not panic when challenges arise. It does not despair when progress is slow. It sees adversity as information, setbacks as signals, and failure as temporary feedback. Hill taught that adversity contains the seed of equal or greater opportunity if perceived through faith and action. The Stoics taught that external events are neutral, only your judgments about them carry weight. By fusing these principles, you create a mind that is resilient, perceptive, and unstoppable, a mind that converts obstacles into leverage and uncertainty into a controlled advantage. Daily repetition is your ally. Affirm your goals, visualize your success, reflect on your purpose, and rehearse composure in the face of adversity. Protect these morning rituals as sacred time, because they are the blueprint your subconscious will follow. Hill emphasized the power of emotionalized repeated thought to ingrain purpose into the subconscious. The Stoics emphasized consistent reflection to ensure that reason governs action rather than impulse. Together, these practices form an invisible architecture within your mind, one that attracts opportunity, guides action, and compounds advantage silently until the results are undeniable. The choice is yours. You can drift through life, ruled by circumstance, emotion, and fear. Or you can rise, deliberate and unshakable, mastering your inner world so that external events no longer dictate your fate. Wealth, influence, and achievement will follow as natural consequences of a mind that is aligned, disciplined, and focused. Every decision, every thought, every morning ritual becomes a brick in the foundation of your inevitable success. The universe responds not to desire alone, but to a mind that is trained, consistent, and sovereign. Step forward now. Commit to the daily practice that the greatest minds in history have used to transform vision into reality. Feed your subconscious with clarity, purpose, and emotional intensity. Train your mind to remain calm, rational, and resilient amidst chaos. Persist when progress seems slow. Observe without attachment, act with deliberate purpose, and let your inner discipline guide every choice. Do this daily, and failure will no longer be possible. Success will not merely come to you. It will follow you, unavoidable, unstoppable, and inevitable. The power is within you, and the moment to claim it is now.